Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports Show for August 15th. How is everyone doing? My name is Eric. I'm the man behind Etoft21sports. We have a phenomenal show lined up for you today. My boy Sterling from Silver Star Sports is this week's special guest. Him and I are going to talk everything about the AFC South, give you a team-by-team preview, share any future bets we are locking in. Gino will have his horse racing bet of the day from Del Mar, and Nick will talk fantasy football in the Fantasy Football Spotlight. But before we get into all that, I want to give a special thanks to the sponsor of the show, the Sharps Betting app. If you are a sports bettor and you are not using the Sharps Betting app, you are missing out. It's an easy bet tracking app. It connects to your sports books. Very easy to track all your bets. There's a message board where you could post plays, interact with other sports bettors. If you're not using Sharps, you are insanely missing out. Make sure to use promo code ETOF499. That way they know, oh, Uncle Rico sent you. Now let's jump into the show and let's see what Gino has cooking for us over at Del Mar tomorrow.
Let's talk a little Del Mar for Thursday. We're going to move to race number 6 for my best bet. We're going to take a look at the number 4, Bad Sneakers. There's just so many things going on with this guy that I like. He's coming off of 2 really strong races last year over at Del Mar. If you look at some of the horses who he was behind, you see horses like Spirit of Machina, who's a multiple graded stakes winner. One More Bid is a graded stakes winner. These were strong races, and this was when he was a 2-year-old early on, this was when he was a 3-year-old. He came back in his second start. Traeger, Hopkins, again, One More Bid. This is a really fast gelding, and now he's had time off to grow up, to get a little bit bigger. I'm expecting a huge performance. His morning workout was excellent, and this barn is really good off the long layoff. First time gelding for the number 4, Bad Sneakers. Good luck to everyone playing this week, and we are getting closer to football season. Make sure to tune in to Eric's show each and every week for the best info in sports.
Make sure to give my boy Gino a follow at It Is Me Gino B on Twitter. I am on his podcast every Monday and Friday. Make sure to check that out. Now let's see what Nick has cooking in the Fantasy Football Spotlight.
Player that is in this week's Fantasy Football Spotlight is Travis Etienne. Etienne's current ADP is 31, and he's RB12 per Fantasy Pros. I'm fading Etienne this year in terms of fantasy for multiple reasons. The first is the offensive line. Juwan Taylor, who was the anchor of the offensive line last season, is gone, and they are replacing him with rookie Anton Harrison. Also, left tackle Cam Robinson is suspended for the first 4 games of the season. I think this line will regress in run blocking this season due to those factors. The next reason is during the season, Etienne's production in terms of fantasy decreased. Before the bye, he averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game, and after the bye, that decreased to 9.5 fantasy points per game. The next reason is the Jags drafted Tank Bigsby from Auburn. We have to figure that he will become the between the tackles runner and the goal line back, thus hurting Etienne's production in the red zone. Lastly, Etienne isn't the big factor in the passing game that everyone thinks he is. Etienne ran the 8th most routes, but was only 22nd in targets and receptions for running backs. Plus, the Jags were 27th in the league with running back target share. Throwing to the running back isn't a big part of the Jags offense. Plus, with Calvin Ridley coming back this season, you have to figure that the running back will be even less of a factor in the passing game. Because of those factors, I'm fading Travis Etienne in fantasy football this season, and that is why he is in this week's Fantasy Football Spotlight.
Make sure to give my boy Nick a follow at NAA Fantasy. He's on my podcast every single week talking fantasy football. We preview different teams. Last week we previewed the Jaguars, the Giants. This week we are previewing the Bills, the Bengals, and the Cowboys, so make sure to check that out. Now, without further ado, let's welcome the special guest today, my boy Sterling from Silver Star Sports. Sterling, how you doing today, my man?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to discussing the AFC South and getting back into football season. Love to see it.
For those watching, Fun fact, Sterling was the first ever guest on the show a little over a year ago. We talked some NBA. One of the first guests on my podcast, really smart guy. Make sure if you're not giving a follow, you give my boy a follow. He knows his stuff. What we're going to do here is we're just going to go through the teams. I'll give all the odds. There's going across the bottom of the screen. We're going to be using FanDuel odds tonight. And then Sterling will give us 2 cents. I will give my 2 cents, have a little discussion, and then move on. So let's start us off. The Jacksonville Jaguars. 9-8 last year. Pythagorean win total 9.72. Super Bowl, they are plus 3,000. AFC plus 1,400 to win the South, minus 155. Make the playoffs, minus 195. Not make the playoffs, plus 165. Over under 9.5. Talk to me about those Jaguars, my friend.
So the Jaguars last year, they're coming off a really hot end to the year. Finished the year strong, made the playoffs, had that win over the Chargers. Trevor Lawrence was starting to look like the quarterback prospect we always hoped he was going to be. I'm really looking forward to seeing him this year. I wouldn't be super surprised if by the end of the year, he's going to creep his way into those top 5 QB conversations if he can keep up the way he was going towards the end of last year. So really excited to see this Jaguars team. They've added Calvin Ridley to be a true wide receiver number 1. Remember last year when they were working with Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, they found a way to make it work, and adding a body like Calvin Ridley is only going to help that offense. So I'm looking forward to seeing him back in action. Although they haven't made too many additions this offseason, so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep up that momentum and kind of keep up with the Joneses as the AFC gets better and better and better. This defense is going to need to take plenty of steps forward if they want to reach their full potential. I think it might be a year too early before we can start talking about them as true contenders, but really interested to see what this Jaguar team looks like.
Let me start out by saying I'm not a Doug Peterson guy. But I will give him credit. He installed an offense that was similar to what Lawrence had at Clemson. Heavy use of shotgun and RPO. And as expected, Lawrence looked a million times better than the year before when he saw literally no coaching from Urban Meyer. To me, Nick kind of mentioned it in the fantasy football spotlight. The offensive line's a really big concern with me.
Absolutely.
Juwan Taylor, he had his best season. They did draft the kid from Oklahoma, and we really don't know what we're going to get. I just don't think that much of him. He was really low on my draft board. That's a concern. Now, Cam Robinson, other side, he is gone for the first 4 games. So to me, that's a little worrisome. Walker Little will be on the blind side, who really struggled last season on the field. Worrisome to me. Is he going to be able to block? They used high draft capital on Travis Etienne. And I'm going to say it, I don't think he's built like a lead back in the league. And then just a couple months ago, they drafted Tank Bigsby high. Why are you drafting Tank high when you just drafted Travis Etienne? That doesn't make sense to me. So I really question how much the usage Etienne is going to get this season. And Nick mentioned the wear and tear. It caught up to him. Before the bye, he averaged 72.5 yards rushing per game. After the bye, that dipped down to 57 yards per game.
Stark difference.
So I have an outside rusher who's losing both tackles. Not one, both tackles for the first 4 games. Production dropped throughout the season, and the team just picked a running back in the 3rd round. I'm a principal guy. Principles are I have to bet Travis Etienne under 950.5 yards rushing. I mean, that's a principal bet for me. That's my first bet with the Jaguars. You mentioned the wide receiver room. Interesting. They're getting Calvin Ridley back from suspension. They have 116 abandoned targets from last season. Getting Ridley will allow Kirk to move to the slot. And Wizo45, what do you make of the rumors Kirk is out of their 2 wide receiver sets?
I don't think too much of it, honestly. I think Zay Jones is kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. So I think he can always be out there. He's going to be on the field because he's been a proven, reliable starter. I think Kirk's still going to get cycled in and out. They paid him all that money. He looked good last year. So I don't really take too much stock into it. They might just be trying some different things. I still think he's going to see a decent target share. Obviously, it's going to dip down a little bit with Calvin Ridley, but
see, I think it's good for Kirk just because he's so much better running out of the slot. He's going to get better matchups running out of the slot. And I think Ridley coming, I think you're going to see Zay Jones the targets affect the most. To me, that's just who's going to be affected the most. The tight end is the staple of the Peterson offense. Evan Ingram had a huge season last year. I'll tell you what, my best call last year was Evan Ingram.
I remember I was skeptical as a Giants fan, but yep, he actually performed last year.
but not touching him this year.
Exactly.
Ridley coming back, just signed that big contract. They drafted Strange from Penn State. Don't want anything to do with him. And I do think with the draft pick of Strange, we are going to see some more 2 tight end sets. I think that's going to be a real interesting look that the Jaguars have with Peterson. You mentioned their defense. 2 areas. They are weak in defending the pass.
Yeah, that cornerback room is super thin.
We'll be honest. They didn't address this at all. And you mentioned, and then the pass rush. They were bottom 10 last year in sacks. Bottom 10. So the biggest Band-Aid to a weakened secondary, and we kind of saw this in San Francisco the last couple of years, is when you have a proven pass rush. Mm-hmm. You can get home, make the quarterback go through the cycles faster. If Allen and Walker aren't able to make that step and get to the quarterback,
it's going to be
you're going to be picking this secondary apart. And I think it's going to be a very long season in Duval. And we need to remember, everyone remembers the big comeback against the Chargers. That dramatic comeback and cover, there you go, Dougie, against the Chiefs in the divisional round. What they don't remember is they were losing to Joshua Hobbs, who has just cut off Detroit in a must-win against the Tennessee Titans. People forget that. I'm a little bit high. I don't think this is clear-cut runaway from the division for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I have a different team winning the division, believe it or not, my friend.
I think that's a perfect segue to our next team.
Tennessee Titans. Pythagorean 7-10 last year. Pythagorean win total 6.82 to win the Super Bowl plus 8,000, to win the AFC plus 5,500, AFC South plus 350 to make the playoffs, plus 210 yes, minus 250 no, over under 7.5. What say you, my friend, about the Tennessee Titans?
Yep, I am repping the Tennessee Titans shirt, actually. And before the bias allegations start, I just happen to live in Nashville, not actually a Tennessee Titans fan. But I actually think this team's being slept on a little bit. You talk about the other teams in the AFC South, they all kind of have this positive atmosphere. And a lot of people are writing off the Titans. And I guess it's because they've been in the spotlight for a couple years and then had that awful, awful collapse where they lost 7 games in a row. But I actually think they're being slept on, and I got multiple reasons for it. So last year, or let's just talk about Mike Vrabel first and foremost. Mike Vrabel is one of the top coaches in the NFL in establishing a great coach and culture over there in Tennessee. His guys are going to fight. They're going to play tough. And even though they lost 7 straight games, they were fighting tooth and nail with plenty of street free agents. You mentioned Josh Dobbs already. They had to go into a must-win game with a street free agent that was just picked up last week. Not to mention all the injuries on the offensive line and the defensive line. So getting Tannehill, who's still a top half QB, is going to be invaluable. He's going to be healthy again. Then they added DeAndre Hopkins, and that's just going to make everyone in the system better. I'm talking Chig Okonkwo is going to get more looks. Traylon Burks doesn't have to be a number one and have to replace A.J. Brown. Kyle Phillips from the slot, he's going to have more room to work. It's going to open up the entire offense and the entire playbook. So Hopkins is definitely going to be a multiplier. And so those are 3 different reasons why Tennessee is being slept on this year.
I love the Titans. And my bet on the Titans is I got them at earlier. I got them at plus 360 to win the division.
That's great.
Obviously, they made news by signing D-Hop. And I know people are going to be like, oh, he didn't go here. He didn't go here. He didn't go here. People forget that Tim Kelly is the offensive coordinator. Tim Kelly has a relationship a good relationship from D-Hop from his time when he was with the Houston Texans. This is why he's at Tennessee, people. He has a relationship with the offensive coordinator from his time when he was at the Texans. It's good in the Kelly's offense, more shotgun, completely different than what we've seen the Titans run before. When looking at the numbers from last year, Titans were at the top half of the league in run plays, but the bottom third in play action. How does that make sense, dude? During Arthur Smith's days, they were consistently in the top of the league at the play action passing. I expect that trend to get back to that this season. Another thing that stood out to me when looking at the numbers was this was the first time in Derrick Henry's career that the second half, he wasn't more productive than the first half. Historically speaking, through his whole career, his average yards per carry was more in the second half. Last year, that dipped. He was averaging less yards per game. I think that is going to change in this season. I think they're going to lean on that short passing game at the beginning of the games, keep Derrick Henry fresher for later in the games. Plus, the offensive line will be better than last season. They are moving Aaron Brower to center. They got Brunskill from the 49ers to start at right guard. They drafted my boy from Northwestern, Big Pete, to start at left guard. They added Dillard from the Eagles to start at left tackle. The only question is the right tackle, where the kid they drafted is going to be suspended for the first 6 games. Radsnell, who they drafted last year, is going to be forced into the starting position. Wide receiver, obviously a big upgrade. We talked on D-Hop. Burks is going to get more favorable matchup. The tight end, whose name I can't pronounce, you did a phenomenal job, so I'm just going to let you run with that. I think he is going to be up. Did you know he was second on the team last season in red zone targets and red zone TDs? I think he could be a sleeper in fantasy and someone we could look to target.
And then one thing I also want to add here, too, is DeAndre Hopkins. It's not like it's one of those scenarios where Randy Moss is coming to Tennessee at the very end of his career, or Julio Jones when he came to Tennessee recently. DeAndre Hopkins is still a very good 1,000-yard wide receiver. So it's going to open up this passing game dramatically. And they've lacked that number one option for years. So I'm excited to see what they can do with D-Hop.
Oh, I think D-Hop is an absolute banger, bringing him in. The issue with the defense is they didn't have anyone that create pressure last season. And with how little the Titans blitz, having someone that can create pressure is a must. For this defense to reach its true potential, they need Weaver to take that next step forward. He had 5.5 sacks last season. That needs to be closer to 8.5 if this team's really going to win this division. The back four, they've spent high draft capital on it. We can expect the talent to start showing with the experience they've taken over the last couple of years, with the improvements to the offensive line, the upgrades in the offensive coordinator, adding D-Hop, expecting Weaver and the young back four to take a step forward. I'm high on this team. I actually took them, like I said, plus 360 to win the AFC South. I Hate the Lakers also chimes in. They also got Spears from Tulane.
Yeah, IJ Spears is. Yeah.
So that's interesting to me because that dude's a dog, and they can lean on him more too in the first half. Kind of keep Henry as that pit bull to have at the end of the games to get that fist pump and just close the games at the end. So I think this roster is just overall better, and I think Vrabel is insanely underrated compared to everything going off. You know what I mean? To me, anyone that watches my stuff know when Vrabel and Tomlin are a dog, I'm just putting my money in. You know, just slide it into the table. And I think he's the best coach in this division, hands down.
I agree.
Definitely some value on the Tennessee Titans at plus 360. Now, before we jump into the Colts, we're going next. NAA86, that chimes in Nick, who did the Fantasy Football Spotlight. Richardson was named the starter today. What can we expect from him early on in the season? Do you think he's going to pop off? I'll let you answer that, then I will rebuttal.
I definitely understand all the hype with Anthony Richardson. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and I think they described it perfectly. Like, imagine you're playing Madden and you're creating a player, and you give them 99 speed, strength, throw power, but then you don't have the points for the accuracy or the awareness. That's kind of like what Anthony Richardson is as a quarterback prospect. And it's a reason why he wasn't super productive at Florida. He's also super new to the position. Only was 1 year as a starter in college. I don't expect him to come guns a-blazing and crush it. And I think it's going to be a steep learning curve. When we talked about him being drafted, he was one of those guys that might need to sit for a while. So I don't necessarily agree with the Colts' decision to put him as a starter right away. I think it could stunt his development ultimately. But there is a world where Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor can combine to create the best run game in the league. And so that can be a saving grace for them and give him a higher floor than initially expected. But I do expect him to struggle in the passing game.
Dan chimes in, Titans seem much improved squad. He likes their win total. So would you bet the win total or would you bet them to win the South? The win total is 7.5.
Yeah, I would go to win the South because I think the Jaguars are the only ones in their way. And I think you could get better odds if you just bet them to win the South.
Now, before we jump in, before I go give the cold stuff, obviously you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. We need to obviously mention what's going on. Basically, he said he was hurt, and now he's trying to. Now Irsay is trying to say this didn't happen at camp. Since it didn't happen at camp, we're not going to pay you. It's basically a big cluster F.
Absolutely.
And the thing that the Colts need to be careful about. I'm not trying to be. What's the word? I'm not trying to be ill-sensitive right here.
Mm-hmm.
They got to be careful that he doesn't do what Lamar did. From what I was told, Lamar could have played last year, but Lamar played his 8 games, guaranteed he got paid for the year, and then just had the doctors say he couldn't play. Have his doctors say he couldn't play. And I really feel that's kind of what the Colts are kind of looking out for here, is they want to make sure they have Taylor. Honestly, if I'm the Colts, I think the team that makes the most sense to try to trade Taylor to, and an owner that's probably, what's the word? The owner that would probably do it would be the Dallas Cowboys. Because I don't think Pollard is a between the tackles runner, and they're switching to an in-between inside zone scheme. And I don't think Pollard can hold up. So if I'm Irsay, look, I try to flip him to the Cowboys, a team like that. But you gotta have him on the roster. You just gotta have him on the roster to start the season. What do you make about this whole Jonathan Taylor?
It's a mess. It kind of shows a lot about Irsay, and just you think about Peyton Manning and how he's kind of affiliated with the Broncos a lot of the time in his post-playing career. It just makes you think a lot. And so I don't think he's presenting himself super well. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to come to Indianapolis and play for him down the line. And I think that's going to have negative, going back to one of your initial questions about Anthony Richardson. I think if you don't have Jonathan Taylor and you don't have that run game to lean on, that's going to be extra detrimental for a rookie quarterback who's already going to struggle passing the football. If he doesn't have a run game to rely on, it's going to be a tough year.
Now, in terms of the Indianapolis Colts, 4-12-1 last season, Pythagorean win total 5.39. So per the Pythagorean win total, they are due for some positive regression to win the Super Bowl. They are 150-1. AFC 71, AFC South 6-1. Make the playoffs plus 350. Yes. No, minus 425. Over under 6.5. What say you, my friend, about the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, so I kind of already talked a little bit about it. I'm just lower on the Colts because I just don't think that offense is going to be able to open up in a way that's going to be sustainable long term. If you can't throw the football and move the chains that way, then you're not going to be able to win games, especially in the AFC with all these dynamic passing attacks. I don't think the Colts are going to have what it takes to compete. So yeah, I'm kind of negative and soured on the Colts. I'll turn it back over to you. What's your thoughts on Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew?
So, I did my notes early because obviously I'm visiting my folks for a couple of weeks, helping them get some stuff going on. And my first note, and I disagree with you, was I think they need to give Richardson the keys to the castle as fast as they could.
Really?
I think they just need to throw him out there and see what they got, because I think they're going to be bad this year. And if he's bad, you got to reboot and you got to start all over. And when you just kind of like sit back and look at this roster the last 2 years, the position that's been missing has been the quarterback. You look at that defense. That defense was an elite level defense. You got Taylor, you got Pittman, you got the wide receivers, you got a good tight end room, good offensive line before last season, obviously. The one thing that's been missing is quarterback. Now, I kind of feel like they kind of reached for Richardson at 3. I really wasn't that high on Richardson. And my thing was he struggled against elite schools in the SEC. At Tennessee, 24 for 44, 453, 2 TDs, 1 TD. Neutral game, Georgia, 18 for 37, 271, 1 TD, 0 INTs. Year before, neutral game, Georgia, 12 for 20, 82 yards, 0 TDs, 2 INTs. Those stats really don't do anything. Those are just an average game against elite level. Obviously bring him in, you're going to have the RPO. 4 wideouts in the gun, vertical passing routes, putting pressure on the DBs to cover. Then you have stuff going on underneath, very similar to what the Giants do with Danny Dimes and what the Bills do with Josh Allen. You bring in Shacklin, the guy that used to be the OC for the Eagles, and he was a quarterback coach over the Chargers. Very instrumental for the stuff that Herbert and for Hurts taking. Is he able to do it with Richardson? I don't know. Maybe this guy is like some quarterback whisperer we don't know about. Is it because Herbert and Hurts reached that because these guys are just studs? It really didn't matter who was coaching them? Or is he just an elite level teacher that is able to convince it, able to convey the message, convey everything, and Richardson can take this step? Because when I look at these guys coming out, if I had to grade them 1, 2, 3, Richardson's a distant third in my eyes. You know what I mean? So I really don't know if he's going to, you know what I mean? Like, I have my questions about him. When I put these two guys in order coming out of college, looking back at my notes, Richardson is a distant third, not just third, a distant third. I expect the offensive line to improve. Kelly had his worst season last year, obviously, with the personal tragedy he went through. I would be the same way. I hope he can regain his form. To me, it's, in my eyes, it's just a miracle that he was even out there playing. Smith and Raymond, I think they look good on the outside. I think my boy Raymond's gonna make another step forward. If Nelson and Kelly can rebound or close to what they've been in the past, I think this offensive line is going to be decent. And I think this is going to be good for Richardson. But you kind of made the point. If Taylor's not there, you know what I mean? Like, they're just going to be able to sell out. Or if this offensive line can't block, they're going to make Richardson's life a living hell. And one more thing, just looking at my notes here, against elite schools, 53% completion percentage, 1-to-1 TD to INT ratio. That doesn't really say wow to me. That really doesn't cut it. I think Taylor, if he plays, I think he'll benefit from the RPO because it's going to freeze the linebackers and the defensive linemen, respecting Richardson's ability to run. In terms of the passing game, Pittman. To me, the guy that's kind of tempting is Pierce. He can stretch the field a little bit more of a deep threat. Defense, I think this defense is good. You got my boy Buckner. Obviously, you're losing Isaiah Rodgers because he was placing bets on games like an idiot. I think the defense is good.
Yeah, solid defense.
The question is, what do you have, Richardson? I don't think he's it. I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to finish last in the division.
Yeah, I got them finishing last in the division as well. Just one more point before we move on. Someone that I'm looking at on the Colts offense is Deion Jackson. He had a good spurt last year, showing some flashes as a receiving back, especially with all the uncertainty with Jonathan Taylor. I would take him if you got your drafts coming up, stash him on your bench. He might be the focal point and get a lot of dump downs from Richardson. So Deion Jackson's another player I'm looking at to target in fantasy.
I mean, he was great last year when he got an opportunity to play. And Zach Moss is hurt too. So that's definitely a sleeper we can look to get involved with. Now, and you know what? If I was home tonight, I would have been rocking my boy We're at the Houston Texans, and I have 3 bets on this team, my friend.
Oh, nice.
3-15-1. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 3-14-1 last year. The 30-year win total 4.93. So they're due for some positive regression to win the Super Bowl 200-1, to win the AFC 100-1, AFC South 8-1 to make the playoffs plus 475. Yes. Missed the playoffs minus 700. No. Over under 6.5. Talk to me about my baby Texans.
The Houston Texans have been waiting for this moment for the past 2 years. Obviously, they've been waiting to get their head coach in the building between Lovie Smith and then the other coach, David Culley, right before that. So they've been waiting to get their head coach, but they've also been waiting to get their quarterback face in the franchise. Obviously, Long Neck Mills, they went a different route. We're waiting on C.J. Stroud. They got their quarterback, C.J. Stroud. And obviously, it's just a new energy in the building in Houston. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what positive momentum they can build. Nick Caserio, I think he's done a good job of getting people that want to play in Houston, that want to be a part of the culture, that want to rebuild this organization. So I think they have just a good foundation. Will it translate to wins this year? I don't think so, but I think they're going to be a sneakily good team. DeMeco Ryans, everyone talks about him being a great leader of men. He's going to be able to do some unique stuff on the defense with stunts, getting Will Anderson to play up to his potential. I think we're going to see a lot of good things with the Texans this year. And also C.J. Stroud, he was one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks in this draft class. So I think he can have a more seamless transition than some other people. And I really absolutely love the move for them to get Dalton Schultz. And I think he's going to eat underneath this year.
Oh my God. I just remember I have 4. Shit. I have 4 bets on this team. God damn it. Okay. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, lay it on me.
They drafted the best QB prospect in the draft in my eyes.
We disagree there, but I remember we talked about that a little bit.
He's going to a great situation.
Mm-hmm. Agree there.
The Texans, because of their offensive line. I really don't think people realize how good this line is. And I could make an argument that when you have Howard and Tunsil, you have arguably a top 5 tackle combo in the league. I really don't think people understand how good those 2 guys are. Now, they added Shrugs, who will be the center in the draft. Great pick. He's going to be the quarterback. Get everyone in line. They signed Shaq Mason, who graded out last year at an elite level run blocking. This offensive line is going to give Stroud time and put him in a situation to succeed. Then they brought in Bobby Slowick. He comes from the Shanahan coaching tree. You hinted on it. What does that mean? Tight end drags. Everything underneath with the tight end drags. And it's going to be the same exact offense. You look at the tight end in the Shanahan system. Every year there was a rookie quarterback or like a Nick Mullins. Last year with Purdy. These guys just coming in. The tight end was just eating. And I think we're going to see that with Dalton Schultz. So my first bet is Dalton Schultz over 550.5 yards receiving. I think he's really going to eat underneath. I think he's going to be a tight end sleeper. I'm totally on him just because of the production history in the Shanahan offense. Now, this is it. Are you ready for this one, my friend?
Yes, sir. Lay it on me.
I think Dameon Pierce is going to have the year that everyone predicted last year. He didn't take a pounding last season because of the injury. And then also I was told he could come back, but they wanted to hold him out because they wanted to get one of those higher draft picks. So they sat him out. They're going to be installing the zone running concept. He's going to thrive in that. I think the offensive line is going to be a lot better. What do you do with a young quarterback? You lean on that run game with the improvements in the offensive line. I'm seeing his rushing total only at 875.5 yards rushing. Are you kidding me? I took Dameon Pierce to do that. And then also, we've seen the history that these backs do in the Shanahan zone running system. I'm seeing 35-1 for Mr. Pierce to lead the league in rushing. I'm going to take that just because when you look at it, the Jags have some questions up front. I think you can run on the Titans. I think you can run on the. I think the only team that is really good against the run is the Colts, and that's the only real hiccup in the division that I think they're going to struggle running against. So I'm gonna take a flyer. I'm gonna take Pierce at 35-1. You look at the other running backs. You don't know what you're going to get from Chubb. I have questions about Pollard. I think Austin Eckler is going to struggle a lot this year. I think this is the year that Pierce is going to have that breakout season at 35-1.
I like it. And then before you move on to your next two bets, two things just to mention on the two bets you already mentioned. Dalton Schultz, he also signed a 1-year deal with the Texans. So he's playing for his next contract, and he's going to take full advantage of every opportunity. So smash that over on his receiving yards. Then Dameon Pierce. Yeah, I think he's a talented back. Well, Texans are also going to be much more competitive this year because they're not going to be tanking for a quarterback. So they're going to be in a lot more games, a lot more chances to actually run the football as opposed to last year. And carry on with your next two bets.
Matt chimes in. Do you think Michi can be sneaky good? What are your thoughts on Mr. Michi?
Yeah, I think if you remember how he played at Alabama, he was always the possession one coming back to the football when Bryce Young would be scrambling, made himself an excellent possession receiver, target, knew where to sit down in zones. I think he can be a great weapon for CJ Stroud and develop kind of that chemistry as they have a long, nice tenured career together. So I think definitely take a look at him. He's going to rack up a lot of catches in the short to intermediate game as he's building a rapport with CJ Stroud.
So I mentioned Schultz over, Pierce over 875, Pierce to lead the league in rushing. I got one more bet on these bad boys. For Ryan's defense to be successful, they went all in. I really feel they saw how good Will Anderson is, and that's why they made the draft pick. And I kind of like that. You know what I mean? Like you push your chips in, you see your dude. You got, in my eyes, you got the best defensive prospect and you got the best offensive prospect. I really like what the Texans
get some blue chip talent for sure.
Yeah. They also need help defending the rushing attack of opposing teams. With the moves the Texans made this offseason, I think they're going to make a step forward, stopping the rush. They added some beefy dudes up front. I like what they did. DBs, DBs aren't as bad as people realize. I think this unit will take a big step forward with a change in leadership, with improvements in the offensive line and the defense taking a step forward. Plus, this team's got an easy-ass schedule. Deep breath, my friend. Texans over 6.5 wins. Boom.
Wow. 7-win season at least. Wow. Okay.
I think they could win 8. I think this team could mess around. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Texans are the team battling Titans. I'm just more on this.
Okay.
For me, the thing in this division for me is I'm not a Doug Peterson guy. Ever since Peterson pulled that crap when they sat people and tanked with the Eagles, that really rubbed me the wrong way. And I get why they did last year, what they did and everything, where, having the success. But you have to remember, when you go from what they had, anything is better. Okay? If they were to let's say bring in Mel Tucker, and I'm not a Mel Tucker guy, I think that would have been better from what they had. So I don't know. I think it was just a big step forward. Also, the Jaguars got some funky schedule too. They spend 2 weeks in Jacksonville. Then they come back, have to play a divisional game against the Colts for the second time. Then they have to go on a short week to Nolo to face the Saints. That's just a real tough schedule. And I think stuff like that, I think that's going to mess with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that if I had to do my prediction, I'm going to say Titans finish first, Texans second, Jags third, Colts fourth, man. That's what I'm going with, dude.
Yeah, I think Titans, I'll give the Jags a little bit more benefit of the doubt because I think they are trending in the right direction. And Doug Peterson did do a pretty good job last year, albeit, yes, Urban Meyer was the worst coaching hire, I think, possibly of all time. So it wasn't a hard bar to beat, but I think he did do a good job, especially with the offense. So I think it's going to be between the Titans and Jags, but really watch out for the Texans. I think they could be a sneaky out week in, week out. And as that young team gets better, I think they could win 6, 7. I'll go 6 games for me, but yeah, they could do a lot of things.
Come on, buddy, pull that string.
I don't know. That's a lot. That's a lot in year one.
Sterling, I'd like to thank you for coming on, talking some AFC South. Why don't you tell everyone where they can follow you on social media? And I understand the career's taking off, man. When you can finally go back to start posting some of that great content everyone's missing.
The career has been treating me well. So, but give me a follow, silverstar_sports. Because obviously I wouldn't be posting on the dead of the off season, but as we get back further into college football, NFL, NBA, lots of stuff, more than likely getting back into posting. But also do me a favor and follow him everywhere. Follow my boy Etoft21sports. You see all the ones down below: Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Give him a follow everywhere. Make sure you're tuned in because this guy's pumping out content and some of the best. So
thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. And you know what? The show is going to be back next week. We're going to be previewing the AFC South with my boy Kyle, aka the DFS Bachelor. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to give my boy Sterling a follow. Dude is insanely smart. He just needs to get back in the game. But he's got some stuff going on, but he'll be back in the game soon. Make sure to give him a follow. Thanks for coming on, and let's make some money. Let's cash some tickets.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
Until next week, boys and girls.